Hello, hello. Welcome to Ram and Goat Astrology. I am Laura Lee, and this is another episode of The Rambling Ram. So, what I wanted to chat about is something that has been on my heart. I have actually been reading a memoir, a New York Times bestseller called The Choice. And this book is by Dr. Edith Eva Eger. And Dr. Eger is a Holocaust survivor. She was in Auschwitz when she was 18. And the choice, embrace the possible, has been, I can't put it down. I just carry it with me and I read it every chance I get. I got sticky notes all over it. I've got notes taken. There's such good gems in here. It's such a great story. It's a hard story, but it's amazing. Dr. Eger is still alive. And she just published another book in 2020. And she is an absolute inspiration. And what she has gone through, the way she has learned how to embrace her healing and change the world. Really, it's really what she's done. She's appeared on CNN and the Oprah Winfrey Show. She has just been really recognized. But I can see when she's telling her story in The Choice and she's sharing how it was for her going through Auschwitz with her sister and watching her parents be killed, and what this, all of this, what this meant for her. The town she was in was 15,000 people. And after the war, there was 70 left. 70, 70 of 15,000. I can't comprehend these things, nor do I really want to. But what I can comprehend is her unbelievable tenacity and amazing spirit. And as I was thinking about what I wanted to record on today and what I wanted to chat about, she just kept coming to the forefront. And I was like, I have to share her. I have to share what I've read. I have to share my knowledge of her chart and explain and explore how this energy showed up and how she worked with it. And that's what I think is the beauty of it, is learning to work with the energy we are gifted. And she's got some pretty amazing, challenging, and lovely energy aspects in her chart. And I don't have her actual birth time, but there's still a lot that I can gain from looking at somebody's chart, just knowing what day and where they were born. So I'm going to share, if you're watching this live or watching this on YouTube, I'm going to share this and you can see her chart. If you are not watching and you want to go check this out later, she was born on Thursday, the 29th of September, 1927 in Kosice, Kosice, Slovakia. And her chart is really, really interesting. And I want to dive into it. She's really an amazing woman who is 96 years old currently and has shared so much of her understanding and gifts and her psychological understanding of humanity with us. And we have to use this knowledge and we have to use this wisdom and share it. So that's what I'm doing. I'm taking the wisdom I have gained from reading this book. I'm not quite finished. I've got a couple chapters left, not many. It's been phenomenal. Like I said, I can't put it down. And when I was reading this, I just knew I had to share her story. So I have her chart up, and she is a Sun in Libra, she's a Mars in Libra, and she's a Mercury in Libra. So 3 placements in Libra. And this energy indicates that she's driven, she identifies, and she thinks in a way that is more focused on balance and harmony and creating a peaceful energy, specifically inside ourselves. And that's something she definitely learned to do as she went through her trials and tribulations, even after the war, in her marriage and moving to Texas, and just all of the secrets that the generation that went through the war learned to carry. They learned that, and they taught themselves that we cannot share this. This cannot be, nobody else needs to go through this. Nobody else needs to know about this. Let's just keep this a secret. And my grandmother is of this generation. She just passed away 2 years ago. And my maternal grandmother was, I think, 2 years younger than Dr. Eger. And we saw this with her as well, where that generation really needed to keep things secret. It was very important that that time frame be kept quiet. And Viktor Frankl was a Holocaust survivor as well, and he wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning, and he started to shine a light on the darkness. And that was the book that helped her to sort of tease out her dark secrets and learn to share this hard, stubborn energy that was really deep inside of her. She was born during an interesting time frame. She got Sun, Mars, and Mercury all in Libra, but Uranus and Jupiter were conjunct at the time of her birth. Now, we just actually had this in the sign of Taurus just recently. It happens once every 12 or so years, and this time frame is when she was born. So she has an energy signature with gigantic, benevolent, expansive, educational, informational Jupiter at 27 degrees Pisces and right next to 1 degree Uranus in Aries. Now, I don't know where these are in her house system, but the fact that this is in her chart, we have sudden chaos, sudden change, and fight with Aries, right? Sudden chaos and change is Uranus, but then we put that at 1 degree Aries. And we've got a fighter. We've got someone who has this constitution to really continue to fight. And Jupiter in Pisces is a benevolent gift of belief. Her programming, her signature programming, is to fight to live and to stay alive. And everything with Aries is life and living and action and movement, and Uranus is chaos and change and independence and rebelliousness. So when you put those together, you have somebody who's got a really intense drive to take action to save themselves, essentially. And Jupiter is this benevolent, expansive belief in spirit, belief that you're taken care of, belief in trust, even if it's trusting in something we cannot see. And her story really embodies this energy, this Uranus Jupiter conjunction. She really had to have a blind faith and a blind trust that she would get out of her situation. And there's some dark times, really, really dark times where it didn't look like she would. And yet there was still this shift with somebody helping her. So this benevolence with somebody else helping, whether it was her sister or a gardener who gave her fresh carrots, or somebody dropped a loaf of bread because she was able to dance. Dancing was a big part of her life and her salvation. And what got her through was this internal optimism, this internal spirit. And her dance teacher said, your spirit, your drive comes from within. And her mom even said, you're incredibly intelligent and smart, and what you put in your head, nobody can take away. And when Mercury, the planet that rules the mind, is in Libra, you have a mind of a lawyer, a mind of a very sharp, details oriented, and puzzle piece putter together. Mercury in Libra really can see the picture and how people affect each other and how circumstances affect things. It's very good at creating the story of how things play out. And she created new stories in her head. She created new dynamics of how things could work so that they were in better harmony, or they felt good, or that it was more peaceful. And that's really the premise of the whole book, called The Choice. Embrace the possible. Well, Jupiter in Pisces, yes, that is absolutely embracing the possible. And conjunct to Uranus in Aries, well, Aries is bold. It is excitable. It is very much engaged in new. What is possible? What's the new thing we can do? What's something we can take on? And she incarnated in this generational placement, this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. She incarnated with this spirit of taking on something new and learning to fight in a new way, being rebellious and a leader in a new way. And when she got done being a prisoner of war and became a mom and all of that, she ended up taking on psychology in a whole new way. And she became a wonderful psychologist that really worked on helping her clients to free themselves from their own thoughts and help them ultimately choose freedom. So that's what this book is about. She also has a second book called The Gift, where she encourages her readers to change the thoughts that imprison us and the destructive behaviors that hinder us. And she is great at this. She's great at that, shifting perspectives. And that's really, if you think about it, what Libra is so great at, their gift, is this ability to see things from another person's perspective, see things a different way. Look at it from this angle and then change and look at it from this angle. Dr. Eger also has her moon in Scorpio. Now, depending on the time of day, the degree may change, but it's solid at 13 degrees in the middle of the day right now where I have it. So I'm pretty confident she's a solid Scorpio moon. And that would really indicate her powerful and intense emotional drive for self-preservation and for getting herself back on her feet and out of the scenarios that were holding her down. She has this emotional need to transform. And it's connected in a lovely sextile energy to Venus in Virgo. So she values the details. She values the mind. She values learning, education. She really, really values all of the things that are very specific and very helpful with increasing somebody's health, mental health, emotional health. She really has a connected values system and emotional system, which makes her an incredible psychologist. When your values in Virgo, the sign of health and wellness and details and analytics, is having this lovely, easy conversation to the penetrating, deep energy with moon in Scorpio. She could feel what her patients needed from her. She could feel whether she should go this route or approach things from one perspective or another. Very interesting energy there, and I can see how this would make her an incredible psychologist. She also has her Saturn at 3 degrees Sagittarius, and her sun is at 5 degrees Libra. So they're really, really in a tight sextile, and they're pointing at her Chiron at 5 degrees Taurus. So that equals what we call a yod, or a finger of God. And when you have a yod in your chart, it's a spiritual calling, a placement where we want to put some emphasis and awareness on this particular planet or point, and the two planets that are involved at the bottom end. So when you have Saturn and the sun and Chiron, well, this is real interesting. She had to grow up and really understand and work hard on her identity and who she was. And again, there was this secret keeping and this basically two separate people or two separate lives, right? This one life where she was this gymnast and she had this life with her parents, and then the war. And then there's this other life where she tried to make a life of it in America. So there is this learning to find the balance between, and working hard to find the balance between who she was and who she became and who she grew into due to her outside circumstances. So Saturn in Sagittarius is the time frame she was born in, 3 degrees. So she was just, her karmic incarnation was to work hard on all things learning, all things being the guru and the professor and the learned one. And Saturn takes time for things to unwind and for things to develop. And she got her degree the same year that one of her children did. And she graduated after two of her children. It took her a long time. And she ended up working very, very hard on getting that degree, becoming that learned one, becoming the guru. But it was definitely part of her heart's passion, because Vesta, the asteroid that rules our heart flame, is at 5 degrees Sag. So she had to take time and work and discipline and structure to follow her heart, follow that heart flame, follow that passion that called her, which was learning, higher education. And it says in her book too, she was talking about getting her degree and she wasn't quite sure because by the time she was going to be done, she'd be 50. And one of her friends said, well, you're going to be 50 no matter what. So it doesn't matter if you get your degree at 50 or you don't, you're still going to hit 50. So she recognized that and said, you know what? You're right. But when Saturn is having a lovely conversation to Jupiter and Uranus conjunction, they're having a trine energy. So this is a 60-degree placement and it's very easy flowing energy. That big benevolent expansiveness of Jupiter conjunct to Uranus helped to drive her. It helped her to be independent and to really trust what her mission was here and why she survived. Why was she one of 70 that survived out of 15,000 of her own town? She had to find her purpose and her heart's passion. And it took a while because of Saturn there and because of the war and all of the things she went through. But man, did she eventually figure that out. And Jupiter helped to really expand it. And now she's 96 years old and is still currently writing books and publishing. So, one of the things I love is learning self care. Dr. Eger had to learn how to take care of herself in a new way. And Planet Ceres is at 17 degrees in Sagittarius for her. And 17 degrees Sagittarius is learning to nurture yourself and take care of yourself. So she had to do things in a whole new way, in a whole new environment than what she was raised in. She was raised in Hungary and she ended up living in El Paso, Texas. Very different energies. So she kept learning from other cultures, other ways of doing things. The Hispanic culture in El Paso or the refugees that moved there, she kept learning from all of the other people. And that's the best thing about Sagittarius. Continue to learn about what you need to do, whether that's Saturn energy or whether that's learning self-care, but you do it through education, you do it through travel, you do it through other cultures, you can do it through religion. It shows up in various different ways, but self-care and learning it big time and doing it in a different way. So she did that. And by doing that, she activated her Chiron energy at 5 degrees Taurus. So with Saturn talking to Chiron and her sun talking to Chiron in this yod and pointing at this 5-degree Chiron in Taurus, think about that. She got shook up on a foundational level and had core worthiness issues on a foundational level that she had to work on and heal. And the book goes deep into the family dynamics of her mother and her father. And you can see very much the Chiron Taurus. It's interesting. I'm a Chiron Taurus generation as well. So it's a full circle, interesting connection. And I identified with the family dynamics that happened and she dealt with before the war. So that's part of her story as well. And she had to learn how to identify with her son and use her willpower and her vitality to really do the healing work of Chiron. And of course, Taurus is slow and it's steady and it's a little bit stubborn. It took her a long time. It took her a long time to get through these wounds, to work her way through and to really deeply understand her mission. And Saturn emphasizes how long that takes. He makes it take extra long. Taurus Chiron is that's enough in the long department, but adding Saturn into that conversation makes it really drag out and it makes you have to work extra hard on valuing yourself and finding your self-worth, stepping into your self-esteem, being able to earn income, having healthy relationships, learning to value yourself. These are really Chiron Taurus themes. And then, of course, Saturn there, you've got this discipline and authority that's hovering over you. And she had all kinds of discipline and authority in her life with being in Auschwitz and her mother and father and just the way she was raised. There was a lot of discipline and authority. She had to work through that. And then, of course, finding peace with her identity, the sun in Libra, finding harmony, finding the things that bring her this internal harmony. And of course, music was a huge part of her life with all of those Libra placements. And she relied heavily on music in her life. Her north node, I think, is probably my favorite position of her chart. She has a north node in Gemini, 21 degrees Gemini. Gemini is the informant. It's the speaker of the zodiac. It's the one who likes to talk and tell people all of the things they know. Your north node doesn't become a real active part of your chart until around that 40-year mark. And that's really when she started to recognize when things were not okay and her marriage was struggling. And I don't want to give away the whole book, but she really started to have some intellectual conversations with herself and really had an intellectual awakening around 40 to 42 and figuring out what her path was and learning how to speak her truth, share her information, and not keep it secret. And Gemini is that sign of duality, black, white, yin, yang, lies, and truth. It's the opposites. And she was raised in a family where you keep that stuff secret and hidden. And after the war, she felt that that would be best for her safety and preservation. So she kept it secret and hidden and eventually learned not to do that. And that her spiritual calling, her soul's calling, is to speak this out. It is to share. It is to write. She was born in 1927 and published her first book in 2017. She eventually figured that out, but think about that. Think about that. That is crazy that you can be born in one decade, in one millennia, and publish something and do your writing eons later, right? She eventually figured that north node out and leaned into it, learned how to use that energy in Gemini and come out of that fearful closet of shame and share and shine the light on the darkness, which is what her emotional space or Scorpio moon needs to also do. Her chart is pretty amazing and her story is pretty amazing. And I felt really compelled to share this with you today because I don't think there are enough people in this next generation who know these stories and who understand the trauma that that generation went through. My grandmother lost her oldest brother when she, in the day after the war was done, actually. I think it was January 20th, 1945, I believe. And my grandma was a teenager, 15. And then after that, there's, things change. Your parents change. The dynamic in your family changes when you lose a sibling. Now, my grandma wasn't part of Auschwitz, but she was definitely affected by the war, just as the rest of this world was affected by the war. Your family was affected by World War II. And I promise you, World War I. Dr. Eger's father was a prisoner of war in World War I. So it's when you zoom out of the picture and you see all of the traumas from the generations before, you can finally get a grasp as to why we have these traumas now in our psyche, because they weren't brought to the light until recently. They weren't shared readily and openly and talked about. And we didn't discuss the generational and lineage traumas that trickle down through our behaviors. Why did your grandma yell all the time? Why did your mom yell all the time? Why do you yell? Why did grandma shut down and not say anything and be secretive? Why did your mom do that? Why do you, right? There's these patterned behaviors that show up in our relational situations. And we see it and we don't want to do it. We don't like it, but it just keeps happening. That's the deep ingrained programming that shows up with trauma and shows up because of this massive thing called the World Wars I and II. And then after that, we had Vietnam, we had the Cold War, it's just been war after war after war. Our society is tired. We're tired of the fighting. We're tired of the political. We're tired of the war. And we've got to level up and change the vibration of our society, which is what this next generation of kids is here to do. My son is 15. My other son is 1, and my girls in between. All of them have very distinctive parts in their chart that indicate that they are here to raise the vibration of this planet. Just by being here, just by living in this energy, we are changing the vibration away from fear and fight and scarcity into community and love and connectedness. It doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen without people speaking up and standing up and sharing the scary things and the dark things they went through so that we can shine light on it, we can create awareness, and we can heal. And that is what the choice really brought forward in my mind. Like I said, my grandma was not part of the war exactly, but she lived through it. And I can see how the experiences Dr. Eger went through mimic or mirror the emotions and energetics my grandma went through, and how that showed up in my mom and how that shows up in me. It's really interesting to think about, really interesting to zoom out and see this dynamic of how this shows up. I'm curious how you see it in your life and what this looks like for you. I'd love to hear. If you want to leave a comment and tell us, I would love to hear. If you've read this book, please tell me and let me know, because I think it's amazing. I was referred to it by my good friend and mentor, Tassin Joy, and she suggested it in a personal development class called Becoming You that I just finished up with. And I don't normally just take a book recommendation, buy the book, and then read it. That's not my norm. But I did with this one. And even my husband was like, wow, you're reading a lot. He said, I haven't seen you do this in a while. I'm like, I know. I really felt called to do this. I really wanted to dive into this book, and I'm not sure why either. But it's really creating a lot of awareness for these generational traumas that we must talk about. With my moon and Gemini in the 12th house, this is what I've come here to do. So I appreciate you listening to the Rambling Ram today and letting me talk about Dr. Edith Eger and the book, The Choice. If you have not read it, please get it and read it. I think everybody needs to. Everybody should have this in their hands at some point in their life and know what these people went through and what our society has experienced energetically and the traumas we've gone through and why we do the things we do. Why did grandma do what she did? And why does the church do what they do? And why? Once we understand that, now we can do some healing of our own. So I encourage you to take a look at it and check out your family lineage and dive into that. If you know, if you don't, maybe do a little research and see what your family was doing then, what was going on during the war for you guys and your lineage, and see what wounds and what ancestral things show up in your life. Thank you for listening. Tune in next week for Ram and Goat. Take care. Hey, thanks for listening to The Rambling Ram. I'm so glad you tuned in. If you like this show, be sure to support us by buying us a coffee or a tea. Financially, that helps us. And sharing us with a friend or family member who you think would like this. It means the world to us and really helps. Thanks so much.